Hey everybody. So I'm not there right now, but I kind of just wanted to do a review of what we talked a little bit about yesterday and then kind of learn some new topics here. So before we get started, let me just make sure I'm on the correct, there we go. So yesterday, if you weren't here, make sure that you're kind of getting these notes as we go. If you were here, you're just going to kind of follow along. If you want to skip through where I'm talking about line plots, feel free, but make sure that you stop when you get to the histogram part. Line plots, as we talked about, we have already actually done some of these from our last unit. A line plot is what this looks like, where you have a number line and then you have X's above it to represent the data that's given to you. And so what we did yesterday, and you could put dots in front instead of X's, which is why it can be called a line plot or a dot plot. But what we did is we went ahead and we crossed off all the numbers in our data and put it in our line plot. Now, why would we do that? Because looking at a bunch of numbers just listed out can sometimes have zero effect and doesn't give people quite a feeling of what you need it to see. You're forced to have to dive more into that information versus if I show you this line plot here, you're going to be able to tell me right away, hey, the mode is 2. You can tell me there's no pets. There's no students that have a pet, more than 4 pets. The second largest amount of kids have 1 pet. And you can just kind of give me some different information, or you can tell me that the distribution of these is pretty symmetrical. It's not exactly symmetrical where one side is the exact same as the other side, but you can see a little bit of a loop, which kind of shows the distribution being symmetrical. Here we've got a line plot. I went ahead and I did all those the green lines there. We figured out that the outlier was 75 because, well, it doesn't really fit with the rest of the data. The range is 45. The mode was 50 because that was the tallest one. And then the median we realized was between 40 and 45. So to find any median, we add those two numbers and divide by 2. And then we went ahead and made the statement that the data has an outlier of 75, but the majority of the data is evenly spread between 30 and 50. Obviously, there's one more than 50 and there's one less on 30, but otherwise it's pretty evenly spread out between 30 and 50. And then here we are, histograms. So that was yesterday, line plots. Today is histograms. So if you do not have this information, I need you to make sure that you are taking notes and writing it down. A histogram is a frequency comes from a frequency table. Right here, this word is histogram. A histogram is a type of bar graph used to display numerical data that has been organized into equal intervals. This equal intervals is very important. We need to remember that the intervals we choose have to always be equal. An interval is something like 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20, and so forth. Those are intervals, and we need to make sure that they're always equal. These intervals allow you to see the frequency distribution, basically how much is being distributed and where. This is an example of a histogram. You'll notice that a histogram has no spaces between the bars. The only reason why there's a space here is because, well, this one has no data. So that's just a bar that didn't go up any. So, but you'll notice that the rest of the bars are about equal length going horizontal, and then the height of them tells you what it should be. Down at the bottom here, I've highlighted what are the intervals. These are called intervals. When an interval is being used, it's a histogram. That's the chart that we're going to be using to make. So we're going to go ahead. This is new for everyone. We are going to go ahead and we are going to make a histogram. So let's go ahead, let's begin. So it says The table shows the number of daily visitors to select. Oh, there's an error in there. The table shows the number of daily visitors to select state parks. To selected state parks. Draw a histogram to represent this data. So we're going to use this data and we're going to make a histogram. But we can't take this data and go straight to the histogram. We have to actually make what's called a frequency table, which basically means I'm going to mark off this number and I'm going to make sure I put a tally. I'm going to mark off the next one, I'm going to put a tally. Mark off the next one and put a tally. And you're going to do that for all the data and figure out how much goes for each different interval given. Now what I want you to do right now is I want you to hit pause and I want you to make your frequency table with the rest of the data. Yes, I want you to hit pause. Hit pause right now and finish this. And then as soon as you have your frequency table done, yours should look like this. So here I have all of my data. I've figured out that there's 2 here, 7 here, 8 here, and 1 on those 3. And obviously the tallies, I have to count them. So instead of just looking at tallies, I go ahead and I write the frequency out. So 2, 7, 8, 1, 1, 1. Once I've done my step 1 of creating a frequency table, what you're going to do is you're going to then take this information and we're going to move it to the histogram. Now we want to make sure about a couple of things. 1, are the intervals all equal? Yes. When I make the bars, all the bars have to be connected. Okay? And we want to make sure that they're about the same distance across. So I'm going to go ahead, if we go ahead and make it, yours should look somewhat like this. I have my first bar going up to 2, then 7. Now you'll notice there is no 7, but obviously 7 is between 6 and 8. Then this one goes up to 8, and then 1, 1, and 1. Now there's a couple of things to check on your list to make sure that you have when you're making a histogram, because you are going to be in charge of making your own histograms. So what are some things I need to make sure about? I need to make sure, does everything have a label? Is there a title? And is my X and my Y, my X axis and my Y axis both have labels? And you would say yes. There's your title. Number of visitors is my X and frequency is my Y. Then you want to make sure that the intervals are all equal. We've already done that. We did that before we even actually graphed, so that's perfect. And then the next thing you want to make sure is, are all the bars connected? Do they look like they're evenly spread out? And yes, they do. So we are done. And you just made a histogram. Now, a lot of you are going to go, oh, this is easy. I know you guys got this. I know you can do this. I need you to make sure that you are careful with what you're doing and make sure you're using a ruler. Make sure that you get things labeled and you will be great. Now once you're done with this video, you can go ahead and replay if you need to about any topic. Your homework will be on line plots and histograms. I just want to remind you that when you're making a histogram, we take this data, we make a frequency table. You must make a frequency table. Then you make your histogram. And that is how we get our histogram. All right, guys. Thank you. Now you can go ahead and get started on your